right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us at this webinar and panel discussion organized by World Scientific Publishing. We have quite the star-studded line of speakers today. We have Dr. K.K. Phua, Chairman of World Scientific Publishing, Dr. Tan Eng Chai, President of the National University of Singapore, Dr. Shu Chen, UC San Diego, member of the U.S. Academy of Sciences, U.S. National Academy of Engineering, Academia Sinica, AAAS, and foreign member of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. We also have Dr. Tom Shi, former head of the School of Aeronautics and Astronautics in Purdue University, Dr. Bali Deepak, professor of the Center of Chinese and Southeast Asian Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi, Dr. Harvey Weingarten, former president of the University of Calgary in Canada, Mr. Xie Haipei, president of the United Chinese Americans, Professor Wang Huiyao, founder and president of the Center for China and Globalization, otherwise known as the CCG, the leading Chinese non-government think tank that has ranked among the top 100 think tanks in the world. Last but not least, we have our very own Professor Feng Daxuan, the author of China's Millennium Transformation. Now, before we start, here are a few housekeeping rules for you to follow throughout the webinar. Please at all times turn off your camera and keep yourself on mute. Please also direct any questions for the Q&A session in the chat. Last but not least, this session will be recorded and also shared onto our social media pages. So please feel free to pop by our Facebook page if you would like to rewatch the webinar or share it with your friends. Last but not least, China's Millennium Transformation is available for purchase on the World Scientific website if you're interested. Without further ado, I will be handing over to Dr. K.K. Phua, who will start off by speaking a few words. Dr. Phua, please.
Yes, on behalf of World Scientific, it's really our great honors to publish the new book by Professor Feng Daxuan. As mentioned earlier, Daxuan and me are old friends for more than 60 years, 60. We know each other very well. And I must say that Feng is one of the very few scientists or authors that can write books really effectively in English and Chinese. Before that, we already published more than 4 to 5 books by Feng, including one Chinese book called 全局高等教育复兴. So in our record, this is really very significant that someone can write books very effectively, both in English and Chinese. And I'm sure this new book by Feng will be a very important book in the field in research in China. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Phua. May I next invite Professor Feng Daxuan to share about the book? Prof. Feng, please.
Friends, ladies and gentlemen, in the normal webinar world, when normality is that people from all corners of the world can attend the book launch, my greetings to you all. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, as the case may be. Also, thank you, KK, for your kind introduction. Your words are especially poignant because, without a doubt, your gracious invitation for me to deliver the speech in Singapore on July 5th, 2016 is the genesis of my interest in the issues discussed in this book, and it's the reason why we are here today. I am deeply grateful, in fact, truly honored, that so many outstanding individuals from around the world are gathered here to express their views. Since many participants around the world are here to listen to from what they have to say, my comments will be short. Let me also give my heartiest words of thanks to the two ladies, Ms. Eugenia Si and my editor, Ms. Bun Hui Tan, for their enormous work in making sure that today's launch goes without a hitch. I want to take this opportunity to thank my late father and pay tribute to my late father, Mr. Paul Feng, who on January 20th, 1946, 3 months before I was born, interviewed the soon-to-be first Prime Minister of the independent India, Jawaharlal Nehru. Nehru's 12 words to my father, "If China and India hold together, the future of Asia is assured," fundamentally altered my persona. I have observed with deep concern, if not in horror, the degradation of our planet Earth, whether it be due to climate change or population explosion or displacement of humans. I have especially a deep sense of helplessness, that there appears nothing I as a meek human could do to reverse the course. For sure, I myself am not worried about the outcome of these existential challenges. However, I am selfishly worried for my children and profoundly concerned for my grandchildren. I have heard many leaders of great and aspirational universities all over the world professing that the research carried out in their respective institutions in such existential challenges are world-class. I want to yell out that the global population explosion and the climate change remain absolutely unabated. To me, what is most worrying is that the current human modus operandi, even with all the enormous technological power we have in our possession and the millenniums of wisdom we have accumulated, which we could tap into, humans simply are unable to mitigate these existential challenges. They are global challenges without any inherent cultural or political affiliations. This was why deep in my inner self, I felt that human beings must come up with a new mindset, a mindset that is not tightly bounded by our conventional ways of thinking, which either originated from the core of the Eastern or Western civilizations. This was why when I began to understand that the Belt and Road Initiative beyond geopolitics and geoeconomics could bestow humanity at this moment of weiji or dangerous opportunity, I became elated. I felt like I had a peek into the possibility of a millennium transformation which could benefit not just China, but the world. So my friends, writing this book, as I have mentioned, became my destiny. Let me now end with some comments in the epilogue of the book. As I was writing it, something reminded me of an event when my wife and I were dating, when we were both graduate students at the University of Minnesota. One evening, we went to Minneapolis downtown to watch the movie Fiddler on the Roof. The story of the movie was about an ordinary Jewish family in a typical rural Russian town in either the 19th or the 20th century. While the movie depicted some of the family's ways and means that are profoundly and typically Jewish, such as breaking of a glass in a Jewish wedding, and the exaggerated and idiosyncratic interactions with the town rabbi, some are no different as people of different culture from anywhere, such as parents wanting the best for their children. The movie has one episode which touched us deeply. As one would expect that whenever people of different cultures intermingle, the consequence is that one of the daughters fell in love with a Russian boy. It is heartwarming to see that while the Russians were bullying the Jews, which created deep animosity between Russians and the Jews, when there were overall and palpable degradation of the living conditions for the Jews, and last but not least, when the parents were genuinely unhappy and unwilling to accept the love between these two young people, love prevails. With the movie so palpably playing out in my mind while I was writing the epilogue, I could not help but to write down the following passage, which to me is the essence of the book. I hope that someday there could be another talented film director such as Norman Ewison, who produced the movie Fiddler on the Roof, who can produce another movie about a group of ancient Jews living not in the Western society, but in China, in the Song Dynasty. In this movie, the filmmaker can set an entirely different theme from the one in the Fiddler on the Roof, wherein, unlike the original one, where Jews were constantly being harassed, bullied, and eventually kicked out of their abodes in Russia, Jews can be depicted as prosperously, harmoniously, and without interference from practicing their ways and means, even religion, within a profoundly Chinese society in Kaifeng. Indeed, the theme would be that the Chinese and the Jews were able to learn from the culturally communicate with each other. Just like the Fiddler on the Roof, where the young Russian fell in love with a Jewish girl, it would be especially interesting if the new movie could portray the intermarriage occurring between two lovers from the ancient and conservative communities. If nothing else, such a film can project to the world that when there is a meaningful cultural communication between the Eastern civilization, such as the Chinese in Kaifeng during the Song Dynasty, and the Western civilization, such as the Jews in the East, in the same society, in the same city, with genuine respect and appreciation of one another, the world can indeed be a wonderful place. In reading and rereading the passage, I came to the realization that while the world can modify, change, or transform economically, scientifically, entrepreneurially, technologically, even culturally, love between humans must remain invariant. The core message of this movie is precisely that. No more, no less. Any person whose inner belief deviates from this core message probably has no soul. My friends, is writing this book simply a manifestation of what my good friend Al of Harvard University refers to as a meager voice of, quote, a dreamer, perhaps, but as a member of the global village and who wants to contribute to humanity facing existential challenges, however insignificant that may be, I felt compelled to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Feng. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Tan Eng Chai to speak a few words. Dr. Tan, please.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Very, very touching epigot by Ta Xuan. It is a real pleasure to join you today for the ebook launch of Ta Xuan's book, China's Millennium Transformation, the Belt and Road Initiative. Over the past few months, the world has been preoccupied with the COVID-19 pandemic. The launch of Ta Xuan's book is a timely reminder that we should continue to pay attention to some of the greater trends that will continue to reshape our world in the decades ahead, long after the pandemic crisis. China's Belt and Road Initiative certainly qualifies as one of the boldest and potentially transformative endeavors that could reshape the dynamics of relationships between the East and the West. It is interesting that Ta Xuan should have authored the book on the BRI because he is neither a political scientist nor economist by training. Instead, His background is in theoretical physics. Indeed, as he describes in his book, his own interest in BRI developed when he was invited by Professor Pua to deliver a lecture on the topic in Singapore in 2016. So what Da Xuan offers to the ongoing BRI discussions are his unique perspectives and life experiences. He is a leading member of the Chinese diaspora who witnessed China's emergence from her economic and global isolation in the 1970s to her present status as the world's second largest economy. In his personal life, he later rediscovered his passion for the Chinese language, culture, and heritage. He has a deep understanding of both the East and the West, having spent his childhood and formative years in pre-independent Singapore and Malaysia, and is also very familiar with the region of Southeast Asia. As a professional academic, Da Xuan spent many years in leading universities in the US, Taiwan, and Macau. Now, this rich and varied blend of professional and personal experiences has led him to a unique understanding of the role and potential of the BRI. I was quite intrigued by two of the main ideas he put forward in his book. The first idea is that of a supercontinent of Europe and Asia linked up by an overland network of high-speed rails and roads, facilitating the development of communities and nations and encouraging, of course, this exchange of ideas and perspectives. Together, Asia and Europe, particularly their universities, can usher in a new era of neo-Renaissance, where leading minds can collaborate to solve global challenges in a holistic and obviously synergistic manner. The other idea he puts forth was that of cultural communications. And here Da Xuan strongly believes that the BRI represents a great opportunity for Chinese citizens to engage with, learn about, and contribute to the world in many more positive ways. This would require a mindset shift in the Chinese to become more culturally conversant and globally articulate. Now, elsewhere in the book, he considers various criticisms against BRI and how this should be addressed, as well as the importance of China-India relations. Though dealing with an important subject, Da Xuan does not write in a dry and heavy style. In fact, his warmth and generous personality comes through as he shares his many life experiences and his own journey of discovery as he learned more about the BRI and its potentially positive role. He also relates the numerous discussions he has had with many individuals across the world on how the BRI can improve relations between people and nations and create exciting opportunities for all. Da Xuan's book, China's Millennium Transformation, the Belt and Road Initiative, is a worthy addition to the continuing discussion on the BRI, as well as China's emerging role in a changing global order. So I congratulate Da Xuan and wish him every success with his book launch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tan, for your kind words. May I next invite Dr. Shu Chen to speak a few words? Dr. Shu, please. Dr. Shu, I think you're on mute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's my great pleasure and privilege to say a few words about Professor Da Xuan Feng's outstanding book. Dr. Feng, with his unique background and outstanding expertise, is the ideal person to write this book. While he is very modest in saying that he never attended a single day of schooling in the Greater China, He actually had an excellent Chinese-based education, and he has profound knowledge and penetrating insights about China. It is remarkable that the keynote speech he gave at the National Tsinghua University in December 2013 had much of the essence of the BRI, even though he was not aware of President Xi Jinping's foundational speeches on this subject a few months earlier. Dr. Feng's topic of speech at Tsinghua University covered two of the three main points of the book, that is, Supercontinent and New Renaissance. He felt that an Asia-Europe high-speed rail system could introduce a profound transformation of the mindsets for Europeans and Asians to become people from the same supercontinent. He pointed out that the Renaissance half a millennium ago met the challenge of that time. The modern challenges to humanity are even more severe, including population explosion, global warming, and many other problems. A new renaissance is needed to meet these existential challenges. His third point in the book is cultural communication, which is fundamental to BRI. The recent profound transformations due to paradigm shift of technology have led to many conflicts in civilizations, and it is necessary to mitigate these conflicts with cultural communication. Cultural communication has its challenges also. An example is the boycott by India of the two recent BRI forums in China. Dr. Feng made a special emphasis on the visionary statement by Prime Minister Nehru to his father, Mr. Paul Feng, in 1946, that if China and India hold together, the future of Asia is assured. Dr. Feng pointed out that while the public opinions on BRI are excellent, there are also some negative comments. Therefore, he said that China must understand and respect the cultures and civilizations of other countries and must explain the BRI in a way that it can be accessible, suitable, and acceptable to them. This is a very important message. BRI is focused on Asia and Europe. It is very laudable that Dr. Feng has endeavored to get BRI more notice in the United States by lecturing in leading American universities. This is especially important today in view of the recent changes in the dynamics between the United States and other countries. The concept of BRI was originated in China, which is the critical nucleus of this initiative. I would like to suggest the translation of Dr. Feng's superb book into the Chinese language so that his important messages can be transmitted to all Chinese people. In summary, Dr. Feng has written a truly outstanding book that has extremely important impacts on human civilization, transcending space and time. This book is a must-read for anyone interested in China and its relation to the world in the millennium and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shu. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Tom Shi to speak a few words. Dr. Shi, please.
Thank you, Eugenia. Hello, everyone. I thank Dr. Feng for having me as a part of this webinar. I'm very honored. Dr. Feng said in his book that he was struck by lightning when asked to talk about the Belt and Road Initiative in Singapore in 2016, which led him to study and to write a book about it. However, for those of us who know Dr. Feng know exactly why he was asked. Dr. Feng is uniquely qualified for at least three reasons. First, Dr. Feng, born in India, grew up in Singapore, educated in Singapore and the US, worked in the US, Taiwan, and Macau, and who has given talks all over the world, can provide us insights on BRI from many lenses and many cultures. Second, Dr. Fan, being fluent in both Chinese and English, and one who studied BRI from writings and talks by Chinese and Western authors, could provide insights on China and West thinking processes on BRI. I, being an American of Chinese descent from Taiwan who came to the United States when I was 9 years old, can speak Mandarin, but essentially illiterate in Chinese, as I have relied on writings in English from Western sources to understand China and the Belt and Road Initiative. Dr. Fan's book can provide people like me understanding that are not reported by our Western media, or perspectives that we don't get in our Western media. Third, I have known Dr. Fan since 2008, when both of us attended a forum on global universities organized by KAIST in Seoul, where Dr. Fan represented the National Tsinghua University in Taiwan, and I represent Iowa State University in the United States. Well, for me, when I first met Dr. Fan, it was admiration at first sight. I was extremely impressed by the depth, the breadth, and the clarity of his thinking. That's the third reason why Dr. Fan is uniquely qualified to write a book on the Belt and Road Initiative, is that he will look at it with deeper thinking that goes beyond economics and geopolitics. Thus, I welcome Dr. Fan's invitation to read his book and to say a few words about it. Well, as I read Dr. Fan's book, I was not disappointed. In fact, Dr. Fan more than satisfied my high expectations of him. Dr. Fan's book is indeed not at all about economics and geopolitics. It is all about cultures, the need to understand each other, and the challenges and opportunities of the Belt and Road Initiative. In his book, Dr. Fan tells the BRI story in the form of a memoir based on his own experiences as an Asian, a Singaporean, a Malaysian, and an American of Chinese descent, as well as experiences gained vicariously through many of his friends and colleagues' lives, friends and colleagues from India, Indonesia, Vietnam, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, mainland China, Europe, and America. From Dr. Fan's book, two of his thoughts especially touched me, and they are both challengers and enablers of the Belt and Road Initiative. The first has to do with how Asians think of themselves and how the West, and particularly the US, think of Asia in general and China in particular. In the 19th and 20th century, most of Asia, except Japan, were dominated by the West. Thus, Asians looked to the West for intellectual leadership. But towards the end of the 20th century, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore became technological powerhouses. And in the first two decades of the 21st century, China became an economic as well as a manufacturing powerhouse with huge global companies. Thus, Asia started to gain confidence again and began to decouple from the West intellectually, exploring new ways and means for success are founded on their own cultures and history. However, for the West, who still sees themselves as the world's intellectual leader and the only possessors of the right values and the right ways and means, feel threatened and uncomfortable. The second has to do with what worked for China may not work for all countries, at least not right away. And that China must be thoughtful implementing BRI to ensure win-win for all countries involved from the very beginning. China achieved success by adopting capitalism because it incentivizes innovation and productivity. However, China's implementation of capitalism recognizes the need to make a profit in capitalism makes the rich richer and the rest poorer. So China added socialism that redistributed the wealth created by the hard work of the Chinese people and brought nearly 800 million Chinese out of poverty in just a few decades. The question now is, when implementing BRI in less advanced and poorer countries, how can China ensure that wealth created will benefit all of the people and not just the rich, including the rich Chinese who immigrate to those countries? I know that this is hard for China to do because China has a policy of not interfering in other countries and other nations' governance and politics. On BRI, Dr. Fang also provided a prediction of neo-Renaissance that could be enabled when East and West and everything between not only meet, but also truly understand each other so that the merging of cultures and thinking processes could give rise to a new thoughts, new ways, and new solutions to address the world's problems and to bring prosperity and peace to all. I look forward to that new Renaissance world that Dr. Feng predicted. Again, I thank Dr. Feng for sharing his thoughts and his latest book and appreciate this opportunity to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shi. May I next invite Dr. Bali Dipak to speak a few words, please? Dr.
Yeah, thank
Dipak?
you. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and very good evening to all of you. It's a privilege to participate in this discussion. So first of all, let me congratulate my friend, the Cocoon Professor of Theoretical Physics, as Professor Feng calls himself, an educationist, and the one who has flair of an economist as well as political scientist for bringing out this wonderful book, China's Millennium Transformation, the Belt and Road Initiative. Well, my association with Professor Feng started in 2010, almost 5 decades later than Professor KK's association with Professor Feng, when he had led a delegation from National Tsinghua University, Taiwan to India, and we signed an MOU with my employer, that is Jawaharlal Nehru University. Since then, we have been in touch, have attended a few conferences together, like the one in Singapore on the BRI, where Professor Pua was the prime mover, and also the second BRI forum in Beijing. It was a pleasant surprise to find an almost small bio brief about myself, along with a photograph that we took together during the second forum. When Professor Feng was serving at the University of Macau, he was kind enough to invite me to Tsinghua and University of Macau for lectures. Therefore, when he asked me if I could be one of the panelists for his book launch, I gave my consent immediately. Well, a few thoughts about this book. I have been fascinated by way Professor Feng has woven the tapestry of this book by interweaving his concepts with stories from thermodynamics, aerodynamics, history, geography, economics, culture, and politics. His notion of supercontinent, so that is the Eurasian landmass, has been juxtaposed between the invasions of Alexander, Genghis Khan, Russia, the Eurasian dilemma, and the BRI being a catalyst in reshaping the old narrative about these two separate continents and making it a single supercontinent. And as to how the intercontinental connectivity through rail, road, high-speed trains will make it possible, and it has been well discussed and elaborated by Professor Feng. In fact, in each of his chapters, including those wonderful case studies. Having bridged the physical connectivity gap, Professor Feng transcends the pendulum swings back. In fact, this is a theory propounded by China's foremost Indologist, Professor Ji Xianlin. It is basically 30年河东, 30年河西, 30年河东. So this I have translated as pendulum swings back. In fact, Professor Feng transcends this theory, propounded by renowned Indologist Ji Xianlin. In the Neo-Renaissance, Professor Feng argues in the creation of a supercontinent mindset that breaks out from its Western mindset or Eastern mindset. That's why I think this is quite unique, and only Professor Feng could have argued this way. In fact, none of my friends and books I have read on BRI by my Chinese friends, so they never even come closer to this kind of mindset. In short, it is what he terms as the New Renaissance, and the obvious catalyst for this is the BRI. I'm delighted to note that Professor Feng does indicate that it would be a circulatory movement of ideas that will enable the humanity to mitigate our problems such as climate change and fight against cancer. He calls it out-of-the-box thinking that will combine the efforts of the people from different civilizations. More importantly, he has elaborated in detail in chapter 4 while discussing cultural communication. This is testified by his investigations into the Chinese Jews in Kaifeng, role of the Indians in the leadership of global higher education and corporations. People like Paul Feng, Professor Feng's father, and Manoj Das, Li Hongfa's entourage from Singapore to London, and many more. When I went through page 136, 37 of this book, I remembered Professor Feng's keynote address in Tsinghua University in Hsinchu, and the line, if China and India hold together, the future of Asia is secure. These are lines from Nehru's interview by Paul Feng, Professor Feng's father, quoted by noted literary figure Manoj Das in 2001 in an article in The Hindu. I wish both could hold together. Unfortunately, there seems to be holding on to the points of friction along the borders. Therefore, holding together, as predicted by Professor Feng, still has a long way to go. Coincidentally, Sahitya Akademi, this is one of the biggest literary houses in India, they have requested that I be the convener of a project that entails translation of 10 Indian award-winning books into Chinese. And one of the books, it includes Manoj Das' collection of stories written in Oriya. I must thank Professor Feng for pointing out the state of China's studies in India and Indian studies in China. He hopes that with such a massive population, both must strengthen China and India studies in respective countries in order to have a better understanding. Chapter 4, this is my second last point, in fact continues in the next 5 case studies, traversing through Eurasia, then exclusively through China's connect with Israel, Canada, Malaysia, and Vietnam. The last chapter deals with the challenges of BRI, which I think I should not go into details. Finally, this is the book that narrates Professor Feng's tryst with his childhood, education, university, his teachers, friends, professional career across the continents, as well as his tryst with humanities and a larger question of communities of shared future. It is not only Professor Feng's tryst, I think it is also the tryst of all the brilliant minds of the early and post-Renaissance, or the likes of Ford, Chinese migrant workers even, or people like Wang Zhu, who did his aeronautical engineering from Durham during the fag end of Qing dynasty. It is also an ode to the great universities around the globe. Whether old or new, as an Indian, I would have been happy and had Professor Feng mentioned of Nalanda, which was established 700 and 900 years before the establishment of the University of Oxford and Cambridge, respectively. It was a great center of learning then, visited by scholar monks like Xuanzang, I Ching, and many more. With these words, I once again congratulate Professor Feng for producing such a wonderful work that is an easy read and will interest people from across the discipline. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Harvey Weingarten to speak a few words. Dr. Weingarten, please.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the case may be for where you are. Let me start by thanking my colleague and friend, Dashuan Feng, for allowing me to write the foreword to the book. Let me say that much of what I would have to say today, I've already committed to writing in the foreword, so I won't be too long, but allow me a couple of things to say. First of all, I have to start by congratulating my colleague and friend for a wonderful book. I first met Professor Feng about 16 or 17 years ago when I started reading the messages, the multiple messages that he would send out to a cast of thousands when he was Vice President of Research at the University of Texas at Dallas. Several years later, I was lucky enough to be able to entice him to come visit me and the University of Calgary, and I got to know him better, and we have remained friends and in contact ever since then. This book, I can't imagine anyone but Professor Fung writing this book. He has the background, both personal and professional, and the interest to write a book like this. And as I say, I can't imagine anyone else who would have the kind of credentials that would give him both the confidence and the authority to write a book on this important topic. When we enter the world of science, which many of us did many years ago, we do so out of a passion and an interest in a particular subject and a desire to understand it better and to contribute to the furtherance of knowledge into the intellectual community of the discipline we chose. Initially, that was theoretical physics for Professor Fung, and I certainly am in no position to evaluate his contributions there. But I can say that the same depth of thinking, the passion for a subject, the ability to think about a problem, to put together ideas and concepts in interesting ways, and to communicate them in a way that is accessible to others, is a characteristic that you see in this book, China's Millennium Transformation. And without taking anything away from his contribution to physics, as I wrote in the foreword to the book, my belief is that this latest book, China's Millennium Transformation, will represent the most profound and deepest intellectual contribution my friend and colleague will make. The concepts that he puts forward of a supercontinent, cultural communication, neo-Renaissance thinking are exactly the kind of things we will need to solve the serious and complicated global problems that face the world today. We can solve them, and we should be optimistic about solving them, but it will require us to understand each other better, to have more respect and appreciation for a diversity of views, and to collaborate on creative and innovative solutions to these problems. I know that universities hold a special place in Professor Fung's heart, and I sincerely hope that universities will take on the challenge and will use Dr. Fung's book as a springboard for a deeper understanding between East and West. One of the things I like most about the book is that even though all the challenges are presented, and one as the author is not shy to discuss the challenges that will be faced as we go forward, there is an overpowering sense of hope, optimism, and aspiration for the future. That we can overcome our cultural differences, and this happens to be a particularly difficult time in the political relationship between my country, Canada, and China. I hope that many in my country take the occasion to read this book to gain a better understanding of a global superpower, China, and how a country like Canada can relate and work with it. So again, my congratulations to you. Thank you for writing this book, and I look forward to future discussions of the Belt and Road Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Weingarten. May I next invite Mr. Xue Haipei to speak a few words? Mr. Xue, please. Mr. Xue, I think you might be on mute.
Hi.
Thank you.
Good morning or good evening. I'm just in awe of this scientific talent and the legends in our talk this morning here. I'm very much aware that I don't have much of a quote unquote a standing in talking about and in among and before all of you. As we were discussing whether we could have a lawsuit with the Trump administration over and about foreign students standing in this country. Professor Feng is the most optimistic and yet most sincere and warm person I have ever known in my life. From his irresistible optimistic personality comes this equally irresistible optimistic book, which is very inspiring. Talking about optimism in a time like this, we hear so much about trade war with China, new Cold War, or just war with China, decoupling of United States and China, the end of globalization as we know it, or the beginning of the age of the neo-nationalism. But Professor Feng insists on talking about things like China's Millennium transformation, about the new renaissance, and about new thinking on the global stage. How strange that is, but perhaps that is the very point. And the message that the more deteriorating US-China relation has become, the darker the moment we are living in at this time, the more urgent the need to bring back the hope for the future and bring back the faith in our shared common humanity. I really like what Professor Feng has said in the book, that there is a genuine recognition or need that deep cultural engagement seems to be one of the first, if not the first, step that China need to take. What this suggests is that for One Belt, One Road project to be truly successful, China will need new values, new mindset, and a new spiritual habit of the heart. Or dare I even suggest that China needs to transform itself before it has any hope of transforming the world. Now, many years ago, China has its historical efforts to reach out to the world and opening up, like what China has been doing lately. And we have our own share of legends. People like Admiral Zheng He, who goes reach out to the world by the sea belt. And we have legendary Zhang Qian, who went to the Western region through the road from the Silk Road. But to put in a historical perspective, I think they are incomplete projects. I just hope that this time that China truly will have its millennium transformation. And I hope this time that China will get it right. And if you read this book by Da Xuan, you will be more optimistic about this project and about our common humanity's future. Thank you, Da Xuan, for your book, and thank you for your contribution to this world.
Thank you, Mr. Xue. Last but not least, I would like to invite Professor Wang Huiyao to speak a few words. Professor Wang, please. Professor Wang, Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. And good evening and good morning and good afternoon. And first of all, I'd like to thank Professor Daxuan Feng inviting me. And also I want to congratulate his new book published by the Scientific Publishing, now to the world. And also I want to say hi to all the distinguished panelists, which I said very well for this book launching. I think it's very, very impressive and very, impactful. So what I would like to say is that I know Professor Feng probably a dozen years ago. We met at Taiwan at one of the global migration conference, global talent movement conference. And at that time, I was deeply impressed what a diaspora, what a knowledgeable and very warm personality that he has. And so since then, I know he's very active. He's been communicating and cross-cultural ambassador for East and West. So basically, even though we haven't really talked much in between, but basically, I keep watching what Professor Feng's and all the contribution he made all those years, and he also was in Macau. He now also affiliated with Hainan University, and also I met you last year at the Belt and Road Summit in Beijing. So basically, I didn't know that you were taking such a great initiative on such a great book. So I would say that now we really need overseas, very from far to see what this grand initiative that China has initiated, and how that can really embrace the world, how that can connect the world, and how that can be really understood and also accepted by the world. So that I think Professor Feng's book would really play that role very well, and also the diaspora community, overseas Chinese community, attention on this gigantic project. Also of the, I think the Daxuan's overseas experience and also international experience, and also the global view and the global insight can really make this book very, very insightful. I think that we should. I really recommend this to be translated in China and probably do a release in China as well. And also, we need more people to pay attention, to look at what this initiative is all about. What I think now is that after 4 decades, as some previous panelists said, that China has greatly transformed from one of the poor country now to the second largest economy in the world, is really something remarkable. As Larry Summers said in my think tank just about last year, is something comparable to the Industrial Revolution of the United Kingdom, basically lifting 800 million people out of poverty and greatly transform a huge country like China is a great contribution to the mankind. So I would echo Larry Summers' comment at my think tank. I think that was really rightly said so. And what I think that for the last 4 decades since China opened up, or last 3 or 4 decades, China has embraced the world, and China has welcomed all the world to come in, multinationals, overseas Chinese, and all the countries has been investing, doing business with China. So China has, and also China joined WTO, and China has benefited enormously with this embracing the globalization. I think now, probably after 3 or 4 decades of development, China now has quite a bit of foundation laid there. And it's time for China to share, and for China to contribute, and for China to connect the world, and also to pay back some of the world contribution to China. So I think China's initiative of Belt and Road, it's still at its early stage, after 5-6 years. But I think still has a lot of room to improve. and have a lot of room to connect. So I think by having more international scholars, particularly well-versed scholar like Da Xuan, to really look at this gigantic centennial initiative is really, I think, worthwhile and meaningful. So I think that we need more of that, and I think we need to make Belt and Road more multilateral. We can involve more participants like World Bank or ADB, AFDB, IBRD, and also AIB. So those are easily achievable, probably with all the development banks work together, and then we can really find a way to really make Belt and Road more workable and more reachable for many countries to come. So it could be a new, new era of new global collaboration, and so that we can make it a stakeholder for every country rather than just China, and then we can make this really a new industrial revolution, probably, or infrastructure revolution. Possibly infrastructure revolution for the next phase of mankind. I think that is really what it's all about. But also on the human side, transformation, lifting the world to the next prosperity, and while at the same time we keep the climate change, everything in balance. So I want to congratulate Da Xuan for your excellent book, and I also echo all the panelists' great comments. So I think I'll stop here. And once again, thank you, and thanks for the publisher for this great book.
Thank you, Professor Wang. Let's now move on to the panel discussion. The topic today is the long-range implications of the Belt and Road Initiative for the world. May I invite Prof. Feng to kickstart the panel discussion, please? Prof. Feng?
Well, thank you very much, everyone who made these heartfelt comments. I felt a little embarrassed when I am neither a political scientist nor an economist, just a person who wanted to say a few words about this initiative. I think that we all agree that in this complex world at the moment, we need to have new thinkings. And I think that everyone has sort of pointed that out. So let me see whether there are questions sent in through the chat room that would be appropriate for further discussions. Is there any? Hello? Well, if not, let me just ask Professor Wang, who just says something, who is coming from China, and how in the next decade or so, he perceives the movement of China in this very complex and convoluted situation in the global sense. Professor Wang.
Okay, thank you, Da Xuan. And no, I think you have raised a great question. I think for the next decade, next 10 years, what will be the Chinese globalizing path, and where it is going to go, and where it is now. I think China is facing enormous challenges and also opportunities at this crossroads of the globalization. And then, from what we look at now, we are now in this crisis of a pandemic, worldwide situation, and China is the first hit by this virus, and then China now is somehow getting this virus under control, and so hopefully the rest of the world will get this under control, and we can really go to the next era of more development. But I think coming back to the topic that you mentioned about this China's the Belt and Road Initiative. I think Belt and Road Initiative has already been proposed for the last 6, 7 years already. It's becoming a widely known concept, and so that. But I think the validity and also, of course, the content of a Belt and Road still needs to be enriched, still can be also improved, and. So Center for China and Globalization, which is my think tank, we actually issued a report on Belt and Road. We want to see Belt and Road probably a bit more multilateralized. For example, China now is signing MOU with 120-30 countries, but it's all bilateral agreement. So we want to see more multilateral involvement, as China also now really support multilateralism. For example, I was at Carnegie the Institute last year. I met Rob Zoellick, and he was saying, so he was the World Bank president, and he said, look, why can't we work together with World Bank? Yeah, that's really a great initiative, and I think that is possible. So I think where is the maximization, the biggest common denominator for the Belt and Road? Is the infrastructure aspect of it. I think it's very, very relevant. China is probably now the best, strongest country on infrastructure. It has built massive high-speed railway networks. It has built a vast 5G network. According to the Ministry of Industry and Technology, China builds 10,000 5G stations a week. So I think that kind of capacity, that kind of technology, that kind of expertise could be shared to the Belt and Road countries, but then China really needs to have a better financing, needs better governance for this Belt and Road development, and so that we can avoid any pitfalls or white elephant things like that. So what we will actually propose that China could be, since China already has a very good example of AIB, which is joined by over 100 countries, most of the Western countries, and it's really the largest recipient is India, and AIB is formed by over 300 staff coming from 45, 50 countries. So I think AIB, also is focused on infrastructure. So why AIB, maybe also World Bank, ADB, AFDB, and all those development banks work together on some kind of, and also China Development Bank work together. And then on that, we can get more stakeholders, we can have a best practice involved. We can really, have an international competitive bidding, open that for all the companies, all the countries. And then we can really make Belt and Road a new impetus, new driving engine for the world, so that we can, led by this infrastructure evolution, so the globalization will enter a new phase of new prosperity and a new construction of the prosperity. So I think that this Belt and Road, we need more people to study, more people to research, making right proposal, recommendations. That's why I'm really highly applaud Daxuan's efforts on that. And you set a good example, and we need more scholars, think tanks, and engineers, and everybody to really find a better way of doing Belt and Road. So that's what I can add. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I noticed that my very good friend Peter Matheson is online. Peter is the president, or they call it principal, of the University of Edinburgh, one of the top universities in the world. And he was formerly president of Hong Kong University. He is one of the person who has the West and the East combined information. Peter, are you still there? Yes, he is.
Yes, I am.
You need to unmute yourself. Peter, can you say a few words?
Thank you, Daswan. Yeah, I mean, I had a bit of difficulty unmuting myself there, but thank you. It's been very interesting to listen to everybody, and congratulations, Daswan, on the book. And you say that my experience gives me some ability to understand West and the East, and I owe quite a lot of that to you because you taught me a lot in some of your thinking. And I think the reason the book is so accessible and the reason that you're such an accessible writer is because you're not a political scientist or an economist. I think you see it from the eyes of a citizen and the eyes of a multinational experience, and so therefore you bring it to others like us that don't have the political science background. So I think that's the very reason why you're able to get these concepts across so well. For me, the Belt and Road Initiative is greeted with suspicion in the West, and I think this is something that you and others are needing to counter, to try and explain why this is a topic to be understood and a topic to be worked with. We are in the era of suspicion and suspicion politics, and there are many politicians that are utilizing that lack of trust to try and further their own agendas. And I think we need to be alert to that. So I applaud you with your efforts to spread the message about understanding the Belt and Road Initiative. You're also never shy to say that there's learning both in China and in the West. It's not just one side that needs to learn from the other. It's a bi-directional phenomenon. And I think the questions coming up on the screen are really interesting about how does COVID-19, for example, alter the Belt and Road Initiative? Well, what I would say is that COVID-19, like every other modern phenomenon, can be exploited by people with agendas to pursue and can be politicized. And that's what we need to, for the good of your grandchildren and mine, we need to avoid that politicization, and we need to get to a place of mutual understanding. And I think the more we can do that by putting the initiative in its context, as you have done so brilliantly, I think the better for all of us. So I wish you well with the book. I think everybody on this call already understands the message and the value of the message. What the task now for World Scientific Publishing and for all of us is to publicize the book and spread the word so that more and more people can get access to this kind of understanding and this kind of accessible explanation of both the pluses and the potential minuses of the current geopolitics. So good luck with it, and when we can travel again and you can come to Edinburgh, we can celebrate here and continue that spreading of the message. But thank you for inviting me to participate.
Thank you. How much more time do we have?
We've still got another 20 minutes.
Okay. You know, since it was mentioned about COVID-19, earlier, before the start of the meeting, Eng Chai, President Tan Eng Chai, President of National University of Singapore, talked about the way Singapore handled the COVID-19. As you all know, that we're in Texas right now, is in a very difficult situation. So maybe we could ask Eng Chai to say a few more words about how Singapore handled the situation.
Well, thank you, Tasha. This seems to be a bit of a digression from your book. But I would say that I think Singapore has done reasonably well. But there are many sort of cities, or even for that matter, China has actually handled the COVID-19 situation extremely well. And certainly, I think we wished we would have learned from China earlier, because there were a lot of things that China did that it only dawned on us why they did that, you know, when we have to implement some of the things ourselves, right? And I think, as all of you are aware, we managed the first wave pretty well. The second wave came possibly from the exposure from returning Singaporeans, right? And we should have actually taken China's sort of stand by quarantining these returning people for 14 days instead of actually keeping them at home, but then, you just need a few to be a bit lax, and then it spreads very fast. So it spreads actually to our migrant workers. And currently, if you look, we have more than 45,000 cases. And thankfully, the migrant workers, which forms about 95% of the cases, they are relatively young, and they are healthier, and so there fewer cases actually degenerate and need actually more extensive care. So if you look at our current ICU, amongst the few thousand remaining, it's only actually a handful in the ICU. And I think our number of people in the ICU, even with that few thousand of cases at any point in time, like 6 weeks or 7 weeks back, it hovers around 20. So that means that our hospital system has not been overwhelmed. And I think that matters a lot. But testing is very critical. And that has been part of our strategy. Like everyone else in the world, we're waiting for a vaccine, but we are also cautiously trying to maintain safety while we are opening up. We went through 2 months of semi-lockdown in April and May. We opened up early June. Right. So far, the number of community cases are pretty much under control, but we have seen cases like, Hong Kong and Melbourne. Melbourne is going through another lockdown. Right. So fingers crossed. We want to make sure that we can sort of control the situation. But I'm quite happy that universities are contributing. So, for instance, we have many of our colleagues who are even helping with designing and making swabs. So currently, I think we have the capacity to manufacture about 2 million swabs per month. All right, and that will be important because we are ramping up our testing. And here the universities help a lot because most of the people who can actually help in the testings are the people who are in our labs, in our biology labs, all right, the RT-PCR tests. So we are able to actually provide trained manpower, as well as we have quite a lot of my colleagues who are looking at therapeutics. And therapeutics, I think, will be the most important thing. In lieu of vaccine. Even if we have a vaccine, there will be challenges because there are actually sort of nationalistic sort of protection on the use of vaccines beyond a particular country. So there'll be challenges going forward. And I think, like all countries, I think we are trying to handle it. And I'm glad that universities actually can play a key part.
Right. Thank you. I noticed my good friend Dennis Kratz from University of Texas at Dallas is online. Dennis has a very interesting perspective of the Eastern and Western civilizations, which of course has a great deal, play a great deal in my book. So maybe Dennis, unmute yourself and say a few words about your concept. Oh, also Dennis has a copy of my book, one of the few people in this region that has a copy of my book. So he has read it, so he has no excuse not to say something.
Thank you, Dashwan. Can you hear me?
Yep, very well.
First of all, I'm embarrassed to be asked to join such a distinguished group of international scholars and thinkers. The point that I want to make about Dashwan's book and Dashwan as a person is that he models the kind of growth of perspective that he's arguing for. It's time to create a kind of convergence of ideas between East and West. I'm a scholar of the Western cultural and intellectual tradition that is rooted in a kind of heroic viewpoint that involves conflict and vengeance and victory, where there has to be a winner or a loser. It's time for the US and China and all of Asia to consider what unites us as humanity and to come together. Dashwan knows my favorite scientific formula is torque. How if we think of not countries, but forces for progress, and if China and the United States can come together at the correct angle, we could create a new kind of culture that combines the best of individualism with social responsibility to perhaps create co-leadership in the world of the future. I know I read my friend, Professor Hicks, who's pessimistic about the future because of he says the leadership in China, and for me, equaled by my pessimism about the current leadership in my own country. If we could move forward, there's another book written 10 years ago by an American philosopher, Anthony Appiah, that said change happens when people believe that their honor is compromised by their behavior. If we could follow Dashwan's lead and look for behavior that is honorable within our countries and therefore between our countries, I believe we can see the renaissance that I congratulate Dashwan for envisioning.
Thank you. I think time's up now. We will probably have to come to an end now. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the panel speakers and those additional ones who have spoken so eloquently. I think that what gives me a sense of optimism is the tone of this book launch. I don't sense that we felt pessimistic about the future, even though at the moment it is rather hazy. But I think that as we move onwards, as we can communicate with people all over the world through this new way of communication, for example, this book launch could not happen if it's just a local book launch with a few people. No one will go 10,000 miles just to attend a book launch. But with this platform, we can do so now. I think we can gain more understanding of each other and also profess our views more succinctly and easier. So thank you everyone for your effort, for the time you have spent today. I want to again thank everyone. Good night or good morning.
Thank you, Dr. Chen. Congratulations again. Great.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Tasha. Congratulations again.
Good night.
Right.
Good day.